Hare Krishna, devotees. Welcome to day 56 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam 3rd Canto. And we are in the middle or thereabouts of chapter 20 of the 3rd Canto. Chapter 20 is titled Conversation Between Maitreya and Vidura, and we're in the 7th section, which we call Brahma's body takes the form of twilight. That's from verse 29 to verse 37, and we are at verse 35. So first of all, of course, let us chant our prayers. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyachade Shatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyas cha kripas sindubhya eva cha Paditanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So here we are, devotees. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 20, and verse 35. Whosoever you may be, O beautiful girl, we're fortunate in being able to see you. While playing with a ball, you have agitated the minds of all onlookers. So Srila Prabhupada makes a really interesting and it's very important point right at the beginning of the purport on the basis of the statement by these demons that this girl who they consider very beautiful has agitated the minds of all onlookers, means they've really become attracted to sense gratification with that girl. So she's playing with a ball, and Prabhupada makes the point at the beginning of the purport that demons, they arrange many different types of performances just to sort of show off the beauty of a beautiful woman. In other words, just for sexual arousal. And even they arrange sporting events, and Prabhupada mentions like tennis, which they play with young women, and the women, tennis of course is a very active game, running around back and forth and so on. And so they make arrangements so that the ladies have very short skirts, and then the men can stare at them and get stimulated. And Prabhupada says the purpose of such sporting events and such ways of carrying out these sporting events is to see the bodily construction of the beautiful girl and enjoy a subtle sex mentality. So it's typical total materialism. Anyway, Prabhupada goes on to make the point that some so-called yogis say that you can enjoy sex life and meditate on some manufactured mantra and become God in 6 months, and there you go. So What is that? It's complete rubbish. And anyone who believes this, wants to be cheated. So Krishna makes some quite amazing cheaters just for them. So these so-called yogis, actually they're enjoyers of the material world, disguised as yogis, dressed up as yogis. And in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna recommends then that, Prabhupada says, if you want to enjoy life, then it cannot be with these gross senses. And Prabhupada gives the example of a sick person. The patient is advised by the doctor to refrain from ordinary enjoyment while in the diseased condition. And that'll help the person get rid of the disease. So a diseased person can really hardly enjoy anything. I remember when I was in hospital just a few months ago, oh, Krishna, talk about suffering, talk about inability to enjoy. So our material condition of being conditioned souls is a diseased condition. If we really want to enjoy, then we have to get free of our material entanglement. Yes. In spiritual life, we can enjoy sense enjoyment, Prabhupada says, which has no end. The difference between material and spiritual enjoyment is that material enjoyment is limited. And, for example, even if a man engages in material sex life, then he can't enjoy it for very long. And yes, so best to give it up. Give up just illicit sex life, and then take up spiritual life, which is unending. And Prabhupada refers to Srimad Bhagavatam 551, in which it's said that Brahma Saukya, spiritual happiness, is ananta, unending. So, Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, foolish creatures are enamored by the beauty of matter and think that the enjoyment it offers is real, but actually that is not real enjoyment. It's just, it's so cheap and stupid, actually. So, on to verse 36. O beautiful woman, when you strike the bouncing ball against the ground with your hand again and again, your lotus feet do not stay in one place. Oppressed by the weight of your full-grown breasts, your waist becomes fatigued, and your clear vision grows dull, as it were. Please braid your comely hair. Phew. Anyway, this is not exactly for sannyasis. Oh, Krishna. Of course, to be a sannyasi, you have to understand what the nonsense is, and know that this is not for us. So the demons, in this case here, and in so many cases, whatever a beautiful woman does, if she sits, if she stands, if she walks, if she turns, if she talks, or anything, they'll see beauty in every movement. Yeah. And as they do, their minds become agitated for sex life. And Prabhupada gives the example of moths at night. I'm sure you've seen little moths. They fly around the lights and they just get burnt up and die. or they fly around a fire and get burnt up and die. So similarly, the demons are like the moths. They become victims of the movements of the different parts of the bodies of beautiful women. And in that way, they just get dragged deeper into material existence. And they ask her right at the end of the verse that please braid your comely hair. In other words, her hair is sort of all over the place. And Prabhupada says, the scattered hair of a beautiful woman also afflicts the heart of a lusty demon. Verse 37. The Asuras, clouded in their understanding, took the evening twilight to be a beautiful woman, showing herself in her alluring form, and they seized her. So they took her, they took the twilight to be a beautiful woman. So actually, the explanation, the description is, it was just the twilight, and they were just taking it like that. So let's just read the very short purport. The Asuras are described here as Muda Diya, meaning that they're captivated by ignorance just like the ass. The demons were captivated by the false, glaring beauty of this material form, and thus they embraced her. All right. So we move on to section 8, which is verses 38 to 53, and in fact, this is the last section of the whole chapter, and well, let's see how we do, but I assume we're going to get through and finish the chapter in this session. So right, we call this Further Creations by Brahma. Further Creations, verse 38 to verse 53, and it's section 8 of this chapter 20. Right, so it's a whole lot, 16 verses it seems, 38 to 53, so let's read through the verses first. With a laugh full of deep significance, the worshipful Brahma then evolved by his own loveliness, which seemed to enjoy itself by itself, the hosts of Gandharvas and Apsaras. So he evolved by his own loveliness the hosts of the Gandharvas and Apsaras. And that loveliness of his seemed to enjoy itself by itself. Anyway, that's the idea. All right, so let's move on. Verse 39. After that, Brahma gave up that shining and beloved form of moonlight. Vishvavasu and other Gandharvas gladly took possession of it. Verse 40. The glorious Brahma next evolved from his sloth the ghosts and fiends. Sloth generally means his laziness and just tamagun mode of ignorance. So from that, he manifested the ghosts and fiends. Sure. But he closed his eyes when he saw them stand naked, with their hair scattered. 41. The ghosts and hobgoblins took possession of the body thrown off in the form of yawning by Brahma, the creator of the living entities. This is also known as the sleep, which causes drooling. Sure. The hobgoblins and ghosts attack men who are impure, and their attack is spoken of as insanity. Krishna, Krishna. Right, so that's all uncleanliness and just tamagoon grossness. 42. Recognizing himself to be full of desire and energy, the worshipful Brahma, the creator of the living entities, evolved from his own invisible form, from his navel, the hosts of sadhyas and pitas. Okay, that's interesting. Anyway, we'll come back to it shortly and explain what this means. Verse 43. The pitas themselves took possession of the invisible form, the source of their existence. It is through the medium of this invisible body that those well-versed in the rituals offer oblations to the sadhyas and pitas in the form of their departed ancestors on the occasion of Shraddha. Verse 44. Then Lord Brahma, by his ability to be hidden from vision, created the Siddhas and Vidyadharas, and gave them that wonderful form of his known as the Antaradana. Okay, verse 45. One day Brahma, the creator of the living entities, beheld his own reflection in the water, and, admiring himself, he evolved Kimpurushas as well as Kinnaras out of that reflection. Verse 46. The Kimpurushas and Kinnaras took possession of that shadowy form left by Brahma. That is why they and their spouses sing his praises by recounting his exploits at every daybreak. Verse 47. Once Brahma lay down with his body stretched at full length. He was very concerned that the work of creation had not proceeded apace. It was going slowly. And in a sullen mood, a bad mood, he gave up that body too. Verse 48. O dear Vidura, the hair that dropped from that body transformed into snakes. And even while the body crawled along with its hands and feet contracted, there sprang from it ferocious serpents and nagas with their hoods expanded. Krishna, Krishna. Verse 49. One day Brahma, the self-born, the first living creature, felt as if the object of his life had been accomplished. At that time he evolved from his mind the Manus, who promote the welfare activities of the universe. Verse 50. The self-possessed creator gave them his own human form. On seeing the Manus, those who had been created earlier, the demigods, the Gandharvas and so on, applauded Brahma, the Lord of the universe. Verse 51. They prayed, O Creator of the universe, we are glad. What you have produced is well done. Since ritualistic acts have now been established soundly in this human form, we shall all share the sacrificial oblations. That's the demigods. The demigods are happy. Yeah, let the sacrifices go on because we will get our share. All right, and on to verse 52. Having equipped himself with austere penance, adoration, mental concentration, and absorption in devotion, accompanied by dispassion, and having controlled his senses, Brahma, the self-born living creature, evolved great sages as his beloved sons. Okay, well, there we go. And now verse 53, which is the last verse of the section and of the chapter. To each one of these sons, the unborn creator of the universe gave a part of his own body, which was characterized by deep meditation, mental concentration, supernatural power, austerity, adoration, and renunciation. Let's go back and go through these verses we just read with their purports. I mean, there's not that many purports, but there are some. All right, so we call this Further Creations by Brahma. It's section 8 of this chapter 20, and it's from verse 38 to 53, and that's the end of this chapter. All right, so here we go, verse 38. Verse 38. With a laugh full of deep significance, the worshipful Brahma then evolved by his own with a laugh full of deep significance, the worshipful Brahma then evolved by his own loveliness, which seemed to enjoy itself by itself, the host of Gandharvas and Apsaras. So by his own loveliness, he manifested the hosts of Gandharvas and Apsaras, who generally are very beautiful. Right. Okay, so there is a short purport here. Prabhupada explains that in the upper planetary systems, the musicians are called Gandharvas, and the dancing girls are called Apsaras. Yeah. So after Brahma got attacked by those demons and evolved, Prabhupada uses the term evolving a form of a beautiful woman in the twilight. So anyway, one way or the other, he ran away from all those demons who wanted to perform sexual activities with him. And then he evolved a form of a woman in the twilight. So next, what's being described right here in verse 38, next he created the Gandharvas and Apsaras. And the Gandharvas and Apsaras, they are demigods, actually. You know, not all demigods are on the same level. In fact, they're considerable gradations of levels of demigods. Yeah, and amongst them, a sort of special group are the Gandharvas, and another special group are the Apsaras, and they are sort of, you could say, they're amongst the entertainers in demigod society. When there are functions, then the Gandharvas come and sing, and the Apsaras come and dance. Yeah. So Prabhupada makes the point in the purport, and of course it's a pretty obvious point. Music and dancing employed in sense gratification are to be accepted as demoniac. Oh yes. I mean, so much of this modern day music, and I tell you, really, I just never listen to it. It's just, my God. But at least from what I have, the little I have read, is so much about like really illicit sex life. Even I read a while ago, I mean like maybe 6 months ago, there's some sort of a subset of popular music of today about killing people, and related with that, there's another subset. I think it's a different subset, or maybe they're connected, where they glorify gangsters and violence and crime. I mean, what can you say? It's demoniac. It's demoniac. These people are coming from the hellish planets. That's what it seems to me. They're coming from the hellish planets and dragging down the innocent but very foolish youths. So music and dancing for sense gratification is demoniac, but when it's for glorifying the Lord, like kirtan, well, of course it's transcendental. And then when it's for glorifying the Lord, when it's kirtan or bhajan about Lord Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, then it's completely fit for spiritual enjoyment. Then Prabhupada says, they bring about a life completely fit for spiritual enjoyment. We go on to verse 39. After that, Brahma gave up that shining and beloved form of moonlight. So this was actually moonlight. The verse doesn't seem to say exactly. But anyway, it's moonlight, and Brahma gave up that form. Vishvavasu and other Gandharvas gladly took possession of it. There's no purport here to verse 39. So verse 40, the glorious Brahma next evolved from his sloth, the ghosts and fiends. Let's just get the technical meaning of sloth. Yeah, it just means extreme laziness, reluctance to work or make an effort. Yeah, that's what is said here in Google. Okay. Okay, so let me just again read verse 40. The glorious Brahma next evolved from his sloth, the ghosts and fiends, but he closed his eyes when he saw them stand naked with their hair scattered. Yeah, so let's have a look at the purport. There's a purport here. It's very short, but it's there. So Prabhupada says the ghosts and mischievous hobgoblins are also the creation of Brahma. They're not false. And what they're there for, Prabhupada says, all of them are meant for putting the conditioned soul into various miseries. Oh, Krishna. Prabhupada concludes this very short purport. They are understood to be the creation of Brahma under the direction of the Supreme Lord. So, yeah, for putting conditioned souls into miseries, Krishna. All right, and verse 41, the ghosts and hobgoblins took possession of the body thrown off in the form of yawning by Brahma, the creator of the living entities. This is also known as the sleep, which causes drooling. Drooling, if your English isn't so hot, and then drooling is when just saliva just comes out spontaneously out of the mouth. So the hobgoblins and ghosts attack men who are impure and women too. And their attack is spoken of as insanity, Krishna. Okay, right, so there's a short purport here. And Prabhupada, anyway, it's very interesting. Let's just go through it. The ghosts, the disease of insanity or being haunted by ghosts takes place in an unclean state. Tamagun, laziness, and just too lazy to keep the body clean. So, Prabhupada says, here it is clearly stated that when a man is fast asleep and saliva flows from his mouth and he remains unclean, ghosts then take advantage of his unclean state and haunt his body. Krishna. Prabhupada concludes the short purport by saying, in other words, those who drool while sleeping are considered unclean and are subject to be haunted by ghosts or to go insane. Right. And, I remember, let me just tell you something. I remember when I was young, when I was in my late teens and up to 20, just very, like I just turned 21, those few years, I was really into the popular music of the day, which was, like rock music. And a lot of it, in fact, so much of it, was about taking drugs. And in quite a number of those songs, they would talk about going insane. They were attracted to it. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let us carry on to verse 42. Recognizing himself to be full of desire and energy, the worshipful Brahma, the creator of the living entities, involved from his own invisible form, from his navel, the hosts of sadhyas and pitas. Okay, that's interesting. And Srila Prabhupada gives an extremely short purport, but it's interesting. Prabhupada says the sadhyas and the pitas are invisible forms of departed souls, and they're also created by Brahma. What do you think of that? Well, the pitas, of course, we've heard, in Bhagavad Gita it talks about the pitas, and here and there Prabhupada mentions pitas. They're the forefathers, of course, the departed souls. And the sadhyas, occasionally you hear about the sadhyas, they're also like forefathers. They're also departed souls. So verse 43, the pitas themselves took possession of the invisible body, the source of their existence. It is through the medium of this invisible body that those well-versed in the rituals offer oblations to the sadhyas and pitas in the form of their departed ancestors on the occasion of Shraddha. Okay, that's interesting. So let's see what Prabhupada says. There's an extensive purport here, fairly extensive. So Srila Prabhupada gives a description of the Shraddha ceremony observed by followers of the Vedas. So Prabhupada says that every year there's 15 days when ritualistic religionists offer oblations to the departed souls, family members particularly. Thus, those fathers and ancestors who, Prabhupada says, by freaks of nature, somehow something strange happened. And so these forefathers somehow didn't get gross bodies for material enjoyment. So they can get them. They can now get gross bodies due to Shraddha being offered by their children, particularly like that. Yeah. So, yes, so in other words, they're living, at least those being described right here, they're living in ghostly conditions. They don't have gross bodies. They've still got many desires in their minds for sense gratification, but they have no bodies with senses. And so they want sense gratification, but because they've got no gross bodies which have senses, then they can't enjoy sense gratification, and this frustrates them. Right. So now if their children, some relatives like that, do a Shraddha ceremony properly, then these ancestors can get gross bodies and can enjoy life. Well, not exactly. They can try to enjoy life. Not that they'll be any more successful than anyone else these days. Right, so Prabhupada says this Shraddha system is still current in India, particularly in Gaya, Bihar, doing offerings to Lord Vishnu, to his lotus footprint there. So Prabhupada explains, when the Lord is pleased with this devotional service done by the descendants, then he liberates the forefathers' souls, particularly those who don't have gross bodies. And in what way does he liberate them? Prabhupada says he favors them to again receive a gross body for development of spiritual advancement. But then Prabhupada goes on to make the point that when these people, when they do get gross bodies, then unfortunately by the influence of Maya, they use them for sense gratification again. Prabhupada says, forgetting that doing this, just getting into sense gratification again, may lead the person to again get a ghostly body, an invisible body, which doesn't have gross senses for enjoyment. But then Prabhupada goes on to say that the devotees don't have to perform Shraddha, because the devotees are already pleasing the Lord, and because of that, the forefathers, fathers and ancestors and whoever from before will automatically be relieved just by the ongoing devotional service of their devotee descendants. And Prabhupada gives the example, he says, vivid example, is Prahlad. That Prahlad, when Lord Nrsimhadev offered him some benedictions after the death of Hiranyakashipu, that, Prahlad, you can enjoy this, you can enjoy that. Then what did Prahlad ask for? Prahlad asked, please deliver my sinful father from suffering in hell. And then the Lord said to him in response to that, you don't need to worry, because you are so advanced that in your family, 14 generations before, they're automatically delivered, means including your father. So the conclusion is then that Krishna consciousness is the sum total of all good work for family, society, and all living entities. If you want to do good for your family, practice Krishna consciousness, that's all. You don't need to worry about doing anything else. That'll be the best thing. Just be Krishna conscious. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying that a devotee doesn't perform any rituals, because the devotee knows that simply by serving Krishna, all the rituals are automatically performed. Verse 44. Then Lord Brahma, by his ability to be hidden from vision, created the Siddhas and Vidyadharas and gave them that wonderful form of his known as the Antardhana. And Srila Prabhupada gives again very short purport, one sentence. Antardhana means that these living creatures can be perceived to be present, but they cannot be seen by vision. Somehow you can tell if they're around, but you can't see them. So verse 45. One day, Brahma, the creator of the living entities, beheld his own reflection in the water, and admiring himself, he evolved Kimpurushas as well as Kinnaras out of that reflection. There's no purport. there. So verse 46, the Kimpurushas and Kinnaras took possession of that shadowy form left by Brahma. That is why they and their spouses sing his praises, by recounting his exploits at every daybreak. Right, so there's a very short purport here. It is, well, it's three short sentences. Let's read it. The time early in the morning, 1.5 hours before sunrise, is called Brahma Muhurta. During this Brahma Muhurta, spiritual activities are recommended. Spiritual activities performed early in the morning have a greater effect than in any other part of the day. Verse 47. Once Brahma lay down with his body stretched at full length. He was very concerned that the work of creation had not proceeded apace, and in a sullen mood, he gave up that body too. The idea that the work of creation had not proceeded apace means that the work of creation up to that point had been going slowly, too slowly. Yeah, not fast enough. So there's no purport here. Verse 48, O dear Vidura, the hair that dropped from that body transformed into snakes. And even while the body crawled along with its hands and feet contracted, there sprang from it ferocious serpents and nagas with their hoods expanded. Verse 49. One day Brahma, the self-born, the first living creature, felt as if the object of his life had been accomplished. Just a couple of verses ago, he felt his work was going too slow. But now he felt that the object of his life and his work had been accomplished. At that time, he evolved from his mind the Manus, who promote the welfare activities of the universe. Verse 50, the self-possessed creator gave them his own human form. On seeing the Manus, those who had been created earlier, the demigods, the Gandharvas, and so on, applauded Brahma, the Lord of the universe. Because these Manus, they're very great personalities, actually. Verse 51. Verse 51. They prayed, O Creator of the universe, we are glad. What you have produced is well done. Since ritualistic acts have now been established soundly in this human form, we shall all share the sacrificial oblations. Okay, so there's a purport here. Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, talks about the importance of sacrifice. And there the Lord says that in the beginning, Lord Brahma created the Manus, along with the ritualistic sacrificial method, and blessed them that you do those sacrifices, and then you'll become elevated spiritually and also enjoy material happiness. So, Srila Prabhupada makes the point that all these living entities created by Brahma are conditioned souls, so they're all inclined to lord it over this world. But the process of sacrifice is there to gradually revive the spiritual realization of the living entities. And Prabhupada says, unless one pleases the Supreme Lord, or unless one is Krishna conscious, one cannot be happy either in material enjoyment or in spiritual realization. Verse 52, having equipped himself with austere penance, adoration, mental concentration, and absorption in devotion, accompanied by dispassion, and having controlled his senses, Brahma, the self-born living creature, evolved great sages as his beloved sons. Okay, let's have a look at the purport here. Prabhupada makes the point, and it's such an important point, that these ritualistic sacrifices, karmakandya, materialistic sacrifices, are meant for material economic development. That's what the basic idea is. In other words, they're meant to keep the body in good condition, so you can cultivate spiritual knowledge. But actually the fact is, Prabhupada says, for actual attainment of spiritual knowledge, other qualifications are needed. What is essential is vidya, or worship of the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada says sometimes yoga is said to be for gymnastic performances, bodily postures which help mental concentration. And generally less intelligent people do these postures thinking that that's the end of yoga, that's what it's all about. But actually they need to concentrate the mind on the super soul. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, after creating persons for economic development, Brahma created sages who would set the example for spiritual realization. Okay, on we go, and here we come to the last verse, verse 53. To each one of these sons, the unborn creator of the universe gave a part of his own body, which was characterized by deep meditation, mental concentration, supernatural power, austerity, adoration, and renunciation. So Prabhupada begins the purport here by saying that the word virakti-mat in this verse means possessed of the qualification of renunciation. So spiritual realization is beyond the materialists. Yes. And Bhagavad Gita says those who are too attached to seeking material possessions and material enjoyment cannot reach yoga samadhi, absorption in Krishna consciousness. Okay. Then Prabhupada talks about the 4 principles of renunciation, and devotees take a guess. What are the 4 principles of renunciation? Let me tell you. Number 1, to avoid illicit sex life. 2, to avoid meat eating. 3, to avoid intoxication. And 4, to avoid gambling. So these 4 principles are called tapasya, or austerity. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, and concludes the whole chapter by saying, to absorb the mind in the Supreme, in Krishna consciousness, is the process of spiritual realization. So there you go, devotees. That was chapter 20. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.